So, Feinstein made a very specific point during Gorsuch's confirmation proceeding to ask him questions about his time at the Department of Justice. I've already addressed that elsewhere. Is it true he didn't swear in until April? So he didn't swear in until after I'd already been kidnapped and somebody had already put a claim on me that was exactly 7 years after the one they had before. Okay, well, here's the problem. Before I was kidnapped and before I was forced to flee Houston under threats of death, and then had to go seek out assistance at a domestic violence shelter under threats of death, and then kidnapped because I witnessed what they did and tried to report on it. I had written a report specifically, and among other things, exposing how Barack Obama created the crazy 88s on his way out of town, right? Which is in the 3 days before he left office. He pardoned 88 people with very, very specific implications, and they were listed on the Department of Justice website as grants. And I contended that what he did is he made credit cards. He made personal use credit cards as part of his own post office presidential executive credit card account system. And that this went back to reform, the legislation from the 1980s that authorized the government to have credit cards. See, now the problem is that with the variety of other things he did, including in connection with the Global Health Security Initiative, which now that it's been revealed that it has the kind of correlations it does with JASTA, and that those 88 pardons ended up showing up the next year when it came to the appropriations process specific to transportation, and the 88 got flipped to transportation. And ever since then, let me tell you something. If you knew what happened before I submitted my petition to the Supreme Court as a review of the federal appropriations process for implications and racketeering, you guys have been consistent with that the whole time, right? It's perfect. It's right on. And I got the evidence that it goes all the way back to a bond set up when I was born, right? It goes back to benchmarks that were connected to public notices on bonds set up on my actual birth certificate. So don't mess around with that part. The question becomes one of, did they willingly and knowingly conspire to cover up for the fact that when Barack Obama first went into office, he agreed to one of those special 12-year presidential loans that only the president can authorize based on collateral associated with defense articles. And so certain people, based upon their demonstration of capacity to engage with or as the cybernetics they had already been set up with but not informed about or provided with a means by which to address and engage with directly, were identified as defense articles and characterized as a state secret in time for somebody to issue us as lines of credit that he worked for people within his party and apparently around the world as a follow-up to the flip that happened on the Citigroup hearings and the alleged money laundering hearings 12 years before. See, I contend that the credit for that flip that got laundered through Congress actually got set up before the actual congressional hearings. And so that's what I meant when literally before March of 2017, what did I say? I said Clinton made a book and just loaned it out to Obama. I may have been incorrect. Clinton may have had a book in correlation with a book that the Biden had, right? You know, Biden had his book and Clinton had their book, and their book had a certain legacy to it, and they expected to be able to use it at a certain time, and they just swapped it. They just lent it out. Because that would make sense, right? Clinton didn't get elected at the time. Obama did. He borrowed the book from Clinton. Joe stepped back. And now Joe is able to cash in on his boy who's dead, right? That inherit through the child. And so now that's two cases. That's two cases at just the right time. So when I was supposed to be all traumatized because somebody was using my so-called Social Security disability payout for the 2 years previously that they took from me and said, well, we're going to pay you back wages for that time when you were too sick to work. But You're not disabled now. You'd have to prove you're disabled in order to get on Social Security. They just took that 2 years and let it get put into the underwriting. And the Supreme Court nicely had, how many cases did you guys intentionally engage during that session to cover up for this process of literally using directed energy weapons in order to target political opposition so that they could be used as lines of credit to cover up for the heinous crimes that should have been exposed and prosecuted as part of TARP and TALF? Actually, not even TALF. It should have stopped with TARP. That's what Congress approved. But what happened? I mean, did a better deal come along? Okay, does that deal look so good now? Does that deal look so good now? Because that 12-year term that Obama set up, it's about done, right? And we got a big problem because Trump totally knew. And so that's why he has that executive order about divesting from Chinese companies that do work with Chinese military tech before the time frame during which the deadline on that Global Health Security Initiative executive order terminates, right? So both Trump and Obama got their little posses going through some sort of pseudo process. I think Joe is just biding his time for the year. He's just riding along for the year because he already knows that there's a super constitutional process where two people are acting as extra constitutional El Presidente, trying to destabilize things internally, and all they're really doing is trying to consolidate the rest of us so that they can loan us out and give us credit to a bunch of people in alleged finance and insurance that can't even keep their own books. And so, just so you know, my charges still hold. The only thing is I would have to resubmit because now, instead of there being 2 kingpins, there's 6, right? There's 6. Actually, there's 6. 5 people, but 6 kingpins, right? 3 presidents of the United States and 3 presidents of the Senate, right? My charges completely hold from the original allegations. And not only that, but the pattern of racketeering activity, that is the federal budget, also brings up other questions in consideration of intentional obstruction of justice and denial of due process to a born citizen of the United States, to be used in acts of illegal underwriting for financial products that now implicate the entire stability of the American government going all the way back to the summer of 2000. And because of what happened this past year, and the refusal to address what ended up happening in regards to those matters associated with other situations, we may have just cause claim to go back all the way to the Whitewater investigation. That we may actually have just cause to reopen Whitewater. As a matter of fact, in an actual motion that was a response to an attorney that filed a FOIA request in consideration of matters that were ongoing during the time when the Office of Special Counsel had their investigation of the Clinton administration, I contend that the response the court gave to him actually sets the precedent that would justify reopening the Whitewater investigation. Now, would conspiracy to cover up for what the actual implications of the Whitewater investigation are be considered as a predicate in connection with the allegations that the Affordable Care Act constituted a contract to commit to a criminal conspiracy? I contend it is. You have not refuted these allegations. Every day you postpone, you merely justify them and continue perpetuating the fallacy that has been allowed to prevail in the stead of actually dealing with those charges.